I wanted to talk a little bit about University 88 activities and perhaps find out what you already know about the Agenda for a Living Planet Festival. How many here have heard about this University 88? Okay, everyone? And have you got brochures in your dorms and sent out to you? How many of you plan? All right, you don't know it. If you don't know about it, before you leave today, go up in the lab and on the table there's some brochures. Take one of them. How many planned on going to at least some of the talks? Okay. All right. It's going to be a festive environment. It should be a lot of fun. Some of this, there are some excellent people. Besides the Performers Workshop Ensemble and Herbert Brün, there's Mr. Kozel who will be talking, Mortimer Adler, Jonathan Miller, and a lot of people which would be worth your time to go out and see. And there'll also be some other performances. I want to bring your attention to specifically some of the events that the Performers Workshop Ensemble and Professor Brün will be a part of. Tomorrow at noon, okay, and there's going to be sign-up sheets at each one of these events, so you can come and look for someone who's holding some sign-up sheets. At noon, the Performers Workshop Ensemble will be in the main forum. If for some reason it's raining, don't leave, but go to Emmons, and that's the backup performance site. You might even, if it's going to be in Emmons, what you might do is, rather than just leaving, go up to a member of the group, and you'll see some of them now, and ask if you can give a hand on something, and they'd appreciate it, I'm sure. Because if it's in Emmons, it's going to be hectic, and the setup will be very quick. So that's at 12 o'clock. Then at 4 o'clock, Professor Brün will be giving his main lecture in the forum. Try to make that. That's a very important. If there were two events that I'd like you to make, it would be the noon and then the 4 o'clock main lecture. Then at 5:30, come to the University Theater Gallery opening. That's right around the corner here. And come to the opening of Professor Brün's graphic art. Then there will be refreshments there also, so maybe that will be a partial attraction. All right. Then on Wednesday at 5 p.m. in room 123, write this stuff down if you're interested. In 123, a member of the ensemble, Leslie Olson, will be doing a flute workshop. She'll be presenting some extended techniques. These are special contemporary techniques using the flute and some new music which has been written recently for the flute. That's in Music 123. The following evening at 8:30, not 8 p.m., but 8:30 in Pruis Hall, Cleve Scott will be having a work or two performed. I'm going to have a world premiere of a piano duet performed, and then the Performers Workshop Ensemble will be performing. The Performers Workshop Ensemble not only performs music, but there'll be tap dance, and there also will be theater. So it'll be a very interesting performance. Tell your friends about it, and try to make an effort to get out to these events. Okay? We'll wait for them to load the slides in the tray. Any questions about this? Yes?
What was the time on that last?
8:30, Pruis Hall. Also today, I think that our guests would be very happy if you would ask questions. And I know, having been raised up in the Midwest, small town, have the same kind of inhibitions as the rest of you. So speak up if there's something that concerns you. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. I am.
Okay.
If you help them a little bit, then you don't get light.
I'd like to introduce Professor Herbert Brün from the University of Illinois, where he has been on the faculty, the music faculty and composition theory division. We have a biography on him, so I won't bore you with any more details, but we're very honored to have you here.
Thank you. I came here before, 12 years ago. And some of the places I could remember, some are new, so quite different impression. When I was here 12 years ago, the things we are discussing in this class today did not exist. There were no synthesizers. The whole idea of synthesizers, samplers, sequencers. Nobody knew anything. The word sequencer existed, but it meant something entirely different. A sampler was something entirely different. So I had to actually change my vocabulary when I became the old people, and the others became the young people, and they talked a different language. Since I have been teaching for years that one has to change one's language if one wishes to have a new and original thought. So I had to apply that teaching to myself and find out for the first time how difficult that can be. We used for years to use a term, a particular word, in a particular context for a particular purpose. Then suddenly the whole industry uses the same term for something else. Then you can get slightly confused. And you know how forbidden it is for a teacher to be confused. And this was only a little bit of a reminiscence. In the meantime, I got hold of the meanings and understand a little bit of what's up. And so I can relax and instead of thinking of tools all the time, can begin thinking about concepts like compositions and structures and information and significance and some such things. How many here in this class are composers, admitted composers? My. So what are you then? If you are not composers, what is the alternative? Can you say that louder, please? Craftsmen. Yes. Well, that was, I don't go along with you there. Till there I went along, I can't understand the juxtaposition between a craftsman and a composer without using the word mere. One is a mere craftsman and the other a mere composer. Craftsman, at the moment it is in contradistinction to artists. It becomes vague. So leave that out. The first was tight. It was good. I like it. So the next step would then be actually that the craftsman makes use of existing alternatives, and the composer generates alternatives where otherwise there would be none. So from a certain point of view, as a member of some community in real life, it occasionally is absolutely indispensable to be either a craftsman or a composer or even both. And one of the opportunities that are given in this, this period of time right now is that for a short time, the two things have moved so near to one another that occasionally the overlapping could be possible, where before it was not necessarily even possible. There were people who could study the piano and could study and study and study and never had in their hands the possibility, the power, the assistance, the support to also compose a single piano piece. Today, when you have the possibilities of the machine, and even if you are only a craftsman, you are already doing things that are not basically essentially different from what you have to do when you are in the same studio with the same machinery and want to compose a piece. So this juxtaposition has turned into somewhat old-fashioned. It is still valid. We understand what we mean when we say it. As we showed, we demonstrated, understood what he meant, he understood what I meant immediately. We never met. So we did not have to renew our mutual repertory in order to understand one another. But as conversation goes on, we will see that this neat division, which made us understand one another, cannot be supported much longer. this neat division is not so neat as it was. Therefore, there are two things. A, you can tell me it's totally sufficient to be a craftsman. I'm just as important for music as any bloody composer is. Or I can say to you, look, if this overlaps so neatly, so nicely, if it is so near to one another, then I can demand that you become composers and contribute to the reality of music, what otherwise would never happen to it. It is quite a compliment to composers to define them that way, and therefore the demand is not actually an imposition, but it is a challenge. I think that members of a civilized social community should be capable of thinking of themselves as potential composers in circumstances where it is needed, at least. So that they do not always adjust and make peace with intolerable circumstances, just because they are there. If you knew that as a composer you have the possibility to reorder things and add items and alternatives that really were not there before, that of course, to the best of your knowledge, must be in your consciousness. You must think at least, whether you're right or wrong, but think at least, here I have written something or put something together. Without me, that combination, that configuration of either sound or picture would never have happened. That's the pride of a composer, and then the word creative suddenly makes a sense. It is not this kind of metaphysical, vague, wishy-washy remark, creative, inspirational, God knows what. It's not a disease. It is a consciousness. The person who wants, for some reason, distinguish himself or herself from this society without leaving it. So to distinguish oneself within and from this society at the same time needs to be creative in order to accomplish this double feat. And in order to know what it means to be creative, you've got to find out what's missing and not what's there. Because only where it's missing, you are missing. And we want you and we would like you. Otherwise it will go on missing. So, simple answer. When is a composer? When is a creative artist? When is it? It is then when a person decides to fill a gap, so that that gap goes elsewhere, so that next week you can fill the gap when it is there, and next week you can fill the gap that is there. The gap walks around, but it can't stand to be filled. So if you fill a gap in the universe of possibilities, the next you know is the gap pops up over there. In the meantime, you have contributed this item, it will become a part of somebody else's cherished treasure. So that's the idea about composition. It answers a few questions that are repeatedly asked by the press, by interviewers, by people who are basically corrupt and hostile. Is how can you work and compose with machines? What's to become of the human spirit? I mean, is that still you? How are you? Blah, blah, blah. And then most of us have not been brought up to answer these rather mischievous questions. And one feels already there will not be much sense to discuss the issue, because these other people have made up their mind anyway, and they know exactly what I should answer, and I don't want to answer what they think I should. So I become naughty and tell them to go to hell or mind their own bloody business, or some other very friendly, polite remark. I will not, and unless they sit down, allow me to invite them to a drink, and then shut up so that I can tell them why the human spirit, or what's called human, is fully engaged, why one works with machines, or it is not even engaged when you are playing the piano with too much pedal. So the quality of a relationship between a human and a machine has nothing to do with the fact that the one is human and the other is machine. The quality depends on consciousness and, of course, of the human. It is just as much the responsibility of the human as it has been before when you play the organ, a violin, paint a picture, write a novel, no matter. The paper will not participate in your responsibility in any circumstance. It will just hang out there. So this was not an introduction. This was already part of what I have to say. And it may be unfortunate, but it is still the fact I have to say that again and again. Does it work?
It works.
It works. So, since I am, due to fate and story, one of the first people who had to answer such questions, already in 1957 and 1958, I have some training acquired in the meantime, I'll respond. At that time, I was invited to participate in a program at the University of Illinois, for which quite a respectable amount of money had been given as a grant, to be a research associate to Hijaran Hiller, H-I-L-L-E-R, who I wish you would all remember. It is really one of the important musicians of the century. He had the courage and the audacity to leave a rather remunerative and high-status position in the chemistry department in order to go into music, because nobody would answer him the question, how can I use the computer to generate waveforms in a way that hitherto was not possible. So he was one of the first, in one sentence, he expressed his desire to generate something that isn't there. Second, to challenge the machine to do something which he required, not the machine required, he. And that is the second answer that I would like to just very briefly say. That's why I respect that man so much. Especially is that all his life, and I learned that from him, I think I'm not a bad student in this respect, he touched the computer as exclusively when he had decided that without it he will not be able to do the piece he wants. So he first tried it with a solo bassoon, then bassoon with piano accompaniment, and he got sick of it, sour, didn't want to do the whole thing anymore, and went back to his mind, what is the structure that I really want? And then he found out that the complexity or the particular resolution of decision-taking was so fine and so subtle that he had to throw up his hands or learn how to program the computer. He decided to learn to program the computer and came up with what we today can historically say the first 2 or 3 computer music pieces that deserve that name. At that time I learned Fortran too, and other languages. It was quite clear that you had to learn at least 3 languages. One of them had to be machine language, assembly language, which is quite something boring to learn, but was at that time indispensable. It's what's called lower language, lower level, higher level, even higher level languages. And then I had the mainframe computers, the large computers, big IBM, whatever, cyber, big machines, I suppose. Parallel with this history went the history of some loosening of traditional routines in notation, in hearing, in conceptions of what is a form, when is a form, what is a piece. There were even periods in the 50s where people got together, quite intelligent people, and proposed that one should stop with the tradition of writing works. So the word work, œuvre, opus, was taken to task. One writes open forms. One does not allow the analyst later to say, that's A, B, A, or C, or something. They can say it until they're blue in the face, but it was not in the plans or intentions of the composer. Consequences were that if you look into the library and go through these scores, wonderful and very picturesque scores. It is really a pleasure to read them and to see what composers at that time thought is indispensable information for a performer and what degree of precision or imprecision was required. How much freedom was given, in what context, under what conditions. It was quite a study. It's wonderful. At that time, that became so complex that the rift between those who were for it and against it became deeper and deeper and deeper. Finally, it came with the help of followers of Cage. I say followers of Cage. It came to the point where the revolt was that people who do not notate properly are charlatans. And that is not very interesting discussion. If you call somebody who's doing this or that as a charlatan, well, either he is or he is not. Under no circumstances the discussion about it in the absence of a doctor of any interest. So the question was rather, why was that rift? The rift came because people still thought that a notation, a score, is something to read. And the sequence of the symbols on the page tells you when to take an action. The symbol tells you what action and when to start it and when to end it. And that was so ingrained that it became very difficult for people to change that attitude of reading from left to right or even from right to left. It always had to be sequential. They did not wish to suddenly take in the whole of a score, the whole of a page, a holist approach, and try to match it with a structure under conditions that leave traces in your musical consciousness that match the structure that you see on the page. So it is not reading and obeying, but it is seeing and matching. In order to get there, I went gradually. I did things in a gradual fashion. And I show you a few attempts that I tell you particularly not so much because I'm so very good, but because they were so very successful. They really worked and they can be used. They are not used up, and that's a wide open field to anybody who is interested in building a bridge between computing, between generating, synthesizing, and also producing something for somebody else, for any kind of collaboration. The first thing I did was a score, still with reading from left to right, for percussion. Can I see first slide? Let's see what you see. It's upside down. The light source is rather black. Do I need this? You hear me, everybody? That's nice, that's very good. So that says, that's the title, and Mr. Juhas was a percussionist who had asked for it. So I gave it to him, and he did perform it then finally. It was very good. You will not hear the performance today. I just show you the notation. The next. So here, these are the stalks. The title of the piece was Stalks and Trees and Drops and Clouds. Now I say these are stalks. Could I have the next? This is a cloud. Can I have the next? This is another cloud. There you have on top the drops and on the bottom a tree. Can I have one more? That's a different story. Can you go back? Thank you. So, the instructions for the piece, for the performer were to understand that a drop is using a reverberating instrument, like a tam-tam, and play it dryly. So, you had to have your hands on it, or you had to find some piece of material that will dampen the reverberations of the tam-tam. So you can hit it and it will not do but it will do. That is the treatment of drops, whereas a tree is the opposite of impossibility, namely to take instruments that have no reverberation, like wood or iron, something, and play it so fast in sequence that it sounds as if it has reverberation. So what you see there, it was, in the beginning, people looked at it, even Mr. Juhas looked at it, then at me, then at it, then at me, and then walked away with it. It took a few days until he got over the suspicion that I was teasing him. And I admit that it was not totally without intent, and let me tell you only by the Bible next to it that teasing is indispensable. In order to get anything that is not routine done, it should at least generate the impression of being a tease. Everything else is beastly serious and can never lead to a proper and healthy love affair. So the teasing is essential. And those who have no sense of humor suffer most because they can't tease. And they cannot stand being teased. That's why we need the sense of humor, much rather, not for a laugh. So these were the first stories when I showed that to people, these trees and these drops, and to use your instruments in the way the craftsman will never dream of. Because if you want reverberation, then you take a reverberating instrument. And if you have a reverberating instrument, what will you do with it? You will make big, long sounds, so that you are covered, and under the cover of the reverberation, you can now in the meantime do something else. Now, after having written 6 or 7 such pieces, I dared that, and it was so successful that I wrote 3 of them, each with a different instruction manual. So each had its own story and its own description, and they went in form of a letter to the performer with its score, and it was, I can now say, worldwide success. They are being played many, many places all the time. And I get tapes. I have a whole shelf full of friendly performers who sent me what they did. Of course, it never gets twice the same performance from different players. The same players, yes, will play almost identical performances. They prefer, the usual preparation is a month or 2. By that time, they know the piece so well, they memorize it, and then I can rely that I get the same representation every time. The next step is has to do with the next slide. Look at a few of them. Next. You are on automatic focus, right? Just look a moment. And if you can, try not to, do if you can, follow the lines. That may be fun, I do not know. But try rather look at it with a squinted eye. At the same time from left to right and right to left. At the same time from up, down and down, up. Change directions quickly and just get an impression of if that would all move. What would you do if you were a dancer or a saxophone player or a singer or a poet? What would be needed from you in order to generate an event of some duration? It doesn't tell how long. It does not tell you anything about tempo, nothing about pitches. Now what is it telling you something about? It is telling you something about the variety that it has in itself. And if you look at it clearly, you will see that some of the little figures have 3 or 4 points connected. Others have 6 points connected. There are some that have only 2 or 3 connected. I will show you in a minute later something which you can take in your hand and look carefully at. So, if you have this, can you improve the focus a little bit on this side? Yeah. That's better, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. So that seems to be an 8-cornered figure that walks up here. And every time it changes a little bit, according to some rules and regulations. It is accompanied at the same time by another figure that walks this way and changes. It disappears up there. Then here is one, a big one, which is invaded by another that gives a shade. So lots of things do happen, although the behavior of each of these parts is rather simple-minded. So what is the fun of the thing is that a certain amount of simplicity gives rise to a large amount of variety. Instead of thinking you have to have a lot of varied things and then get complexity, usually you get noise, which is not complex. What you can aim at to be rather stingy with your items, but form them and configure them in such a way that they generate in between themselves a complexity of certain variety. And if you then know that in order to produce something that matches this, an analogy to it, you have to find in your field of interest some action, some composition of equal variety. So if you find here there are 16 items, and these 16 items represent together some 5 or 6 different behaviors. And it has 5 parts. And the largest goes across the whole page, and the shortest happens even only once. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 statements. You can make these statements about this graphic. And then you use these statements and take them away from the graphic to another desk. And at that desk, now you sit and compose a piece that satisfies 16 or 18 statements that you derived from describing that. This is wonderful composition lesson, and if you once try it, not with too large a piece, just a 4-minute piece, a 4-minute dance or a 4-minute song, which is obedient only to your own choice of descriptive terms of the picture, and you transfer the descriptions of the picture to the description of the piece that you will now compose. You will be surprised how much your own this is going to be. This is a promise. Can you see some more? Yeah? Another? Aha. I wonder whether one could see that one upright.
See what?
Upright. 90 degrees. It's not really telling. I think of it. And now the opposite direction, please. Yeah. Good. That's the way I see it, for instance, and you don't have to follow me, but I just try what I would do. I get this leaf with the drawing, and I turn it around and around in all kinds of directions. And then I find out, as you also can find out, if you have a photo of your friends or your parents or yourself. You play the little game, look at it upside down and on the side, various directions. You will be surprised what new discoveries you make. But you have to do it with some attention and some memory. What did it look like? And now remember the statements you made to yourself about it. Turn it around and see how many of the statements still hold and what new ones you make. This also has the same property. This is the way I see it. It's a statement. It does not represent any truth or any wisdom. It represents me. I am here and tell you, Herbert Brün, when given this leaf, would finally decide on that position and now start describing it. That's just in order to give you an idea how low level it is to start from, and how high level it can become when you have your statements together. show another piece. So this is making use of every computer program's laboratory that delivers to you these little squares and circles. More?
That's it.
That's it. Thank you very much. Can I have some light, please? Okay. I think I would like now to have my friend Alexander McHattie take his double bass and play a horrible piece for you. It's by me. I composed it. And it was not done with computers. It was rather done as if I wanted to write a piece that definitely does not require a computer, and still is distinguished of what one calls a nice piece of music. So I used the double bass, the instrument, as both the sender and the receiver of the music. So it is a serenade to the double bass. If I serenade somebody, then I will probably outline the attractive features of somebody I serenade, wouldn't you? I would say you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're just the right size, you speak the right language, you have the right thoughts, you understand me whenever I say something, your side is my music, and so on. And centuries this was approximately some kind of text. Today, if I were to understand the texts that go with the rock groups, probably I would understand the same in some variation. There is some kind of sales pitch involved, and most of the time by praising the other you sell yourself. I think this is what is called courting. Now I wanted double bass player to court the double bass. And so since he is above and the double bass is below, whereas usually in the case of a serenade, the beloved is up there on the balcony, and you are down there playing up. I called it per contra serenata bassa. In the contrary, it's a serenade down instead of up, which includes the contrabass. Contrabass, which is the term for double bass in Italian. So this is the name of it. It lasts 8 minutes. And it is very difficult to listen to unless you are interested in the difference of timbre without much ado. It's a very simple and enormously difficult technique for the player and the nerves of the player. But there's not a single very interesting idea. Told you what I told you about the piece before. I want to tell you two more things about the piece that are of interest in a general way, not just for me. This hand is one hand. You cannot split it in two, no matter what you do. No craftsman can help you split this hand in two. The poor guy is instructed by score to glide up and down the strings. At the same time, to pluck the empty strings. I tell him in the score also which string to pluck, on which string to glide, on which string to pluck. The instrument itself has certain idiosyncrasies. Whether you pluck a tone here or here is a different timbre. Those who are working with fine instruments will hear that. Can you demonstrate that position? Also the high ones. Now, if I would want these variety of sound, especially, I would have to write lots of little remarks in my score. Instead of writing these little remarks in my score, I let his hand glide according to a prescribed path. And every time he does that, his fingers will be at the position of the string where I want the pluck to happen. So it is a remote control thing by combining two things and giving orders only to one. It's a way to ruling our society. So it is in a way a satire on our freedom. We think, we do what we want. Unfortunately, most of the time we do what the hand is doing, and we are merely the fingers that pluck according to the position where the hand is. You do not have, he does not have any choice how to pluck the string. He only knows when, and he knows because of the hand wherever he is. That is in the world of synthesizers and computers and the MIDI world, this phenomenology can happen more often than you think. While you think you make choices, you are so much not master of the complexity of the system, that the system will do certain things flawlessly with a big grin on its face that you do not want at all, and you say, wow. This leads to the last remark with regard to that. It is, if a person makes a choice in the situation of no alternatives, then it is not only ridiculous, but also insignificant. You need at least two alternatives so that a decision taking makes any sense. If you do not know what the decision is, then you cannot convey that sense. So, the question whether to become a composer or not looms even larger than I said before. In this situation, in order to make significant action, or that whatever you do and choose and like, create or generate, have significance, you first to see under all circumstances, it doesn't matter whether you agree with me or not, it will not change. You've got to generate a context where that decision of yours is significant. It must make a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, you may just as well go to bed and sleep. It will probably make more difference. And the boredom that oozes out of so much music today is that it is neither simple enough to become antagonizing, as this piece, or it is so complex that it doesn't even antagonize anymore. It is just indifferent. It could also be the other way around, or this way around. So it makes no significance. So the whole profession is in danger to be drowned in commonplace, even though it's at the moment very astonishing commonplace, very surprising commonplace, and probably easily advertised commonplace. It is still very commonplace. So I would like to warn you against that. Now, I thank you very much. And I promised I'd show you something. I have 3 pages only, but if you look at them, I mean, you don't have to study them. Only I don't have them as slides yet. Look at this one. Any direction is fine. Give it on, let everybody look over. This is a quartet. I mean, I said so, you see. I will play it for you. one sees the layers, that's one, 1, 2, 3, 4, do you? That's another way of doing it. Then it is not a quartet anymore unless it's a diving quartet. It's not a bad idea, let's try that. It was meant, generally the computer works this way. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. So this particular piece of score, if you hold it up a second, then the people behind you can see it. Just hold it up. What I'm saying now, you can see what is the common property of the pages. 4 layers that can be seen and interpreted by 4 players. I had 4 players. They chosen these 1 page of those and prepared it. And then I was invited under the notion that maybe I had something to say. All I had to say was not only thank you, but that I enjoyed the piece very much. Who composed it? And it was them. They had composed the piece, in fact, by making decisions in the direction I mentioned before, how to find the sufficient, or the word, jargon word is requisite variety, required variety or requisite variety of a string quartet of 4 people who have some experience in quartet playing. They did play some string quartets by Mozart, one by Borodin. They had studied just recently Brahms and Bartók. They had not yet played any Schönberg. That was coming up. So very young people and excellent craftsmen. I can say that without any mockery. It was admirable. You will hear it in a minute, if you allow me still the time. Would you like a candy? The situation is looking normal. Violinist, second violin, viola, cello. And they did it all actually by themselves. They have made it 4 movements. As I was informed later, they rotated the first layer. It was only 1 page, not 3. These 3 are only because I wanted to show each of them. It was 1 such page. They used it 4 times. The first time, the first violinist had the top row and gave the instructions, the general instructions for how to interpret the signs, the symbolism of the page. The second movement was the cellist, or the viola player, I forget now, you will hear, took the top row and had to prepare instructions for the other players, and so forth. The third player, the fourth player. 4 movements. Each movement, therefore, carrying some of the individuality of the top row player. Since the context was thus generated, and one had a comparison between 3 or 4 people and understood, aha, there are 4 alternatives. At least, there are probably 100, but here they put me into a universe of 4 alternatives. Within these 4 alternatives, I can now enjoy the variety of 4 personalities, having the freedom for a short time, a limited time, to make decisions with the cooperation of others. An ideal situation. I'm curious whether you can enjoy it. Play this. women, one man. The cellist.
got some reports. It looked good too.
turned on this clapping. Tremendous success for the players. And pretty large audience. It was first played at some symposium. And then afterwards I made a trio. Same technique, but trio, which makes other demands, and I had that performed by 3 percussionists. First performance was chosen by 3 percussionists who took it with them and went to St. Louis to the percussionists convention. And then, there you can imagine what, it was a riot. But these things are points of departure. There are propositions that I have the luck to live in an environment where I, if I should choose, can implement such a proposition at least once. I find the machine, I find the possibility to get the time, get the players, so I can do things. If you can generate such situation here, for an idea, pipe dream, sour grapes, never mind. You have such an idea, you can implement it, try it out, and make clear, this time I have chosen to write for 3 string players and 1 flute player. And this time I wrote something with the assistance of a computer. And this time I went into the electronic studio and took great pains, not using any synthesizer, but synthesize every sound by ear, slowly, with filters and all the allegedly old-fashioned gadgets. If you can keep yourself to be such an environment for your ideas, that every idea you have then is nested in a context which makes it significant, you will be very happy and not so routine, and otherwise things threaten to go sour in no time. You will see it, how long it takes, or how not long it takes, until this whole industry of PCs will break down. Because everybody has one, so there's no status involved with it anymore. From then on, they go collecting toothpicks or something. I'm not joking. This is serious. So it is best if you establish for yourself, while you study, some kind of, keep sense of humor and everything, but somewhere there must some human dignity reserved so that your next step, the choice you make, has significance. It should accompany you, right or wrong. That's not interesting. That's academic. But that it make a significance. I want that. I think I have to stop here, right? Yes, I could go on, but better not. Yes, if there is any comment or question that I should respond to, I'd like to.
I noticed on your bio here that it says you did some music for the theater.
Yes.
Did you use the same types of techniques?
No. That was all in 1957 till 63 in Germany, where you couldn't get a computer for money. But the first electronic studios were found in Köln, and in Milano, Milan, and in Paris. And there I was a guest, so yes, I can report that I did the first electronic music on German stage with a legitimate piece. I mean, Faust by Goethe, after all. If that means something to you, it's the theater play, the big German thoughtful profundity and everything. And so I made music, and there I executed what I said last. I made up my mind how much of it is to be tape music, how much of it is to be instrumental music, what is to be a tonal song. Mephisto has to sing a little serenade, and that I made in A minor. So I was far ahead of all the rock music today, who's also in A minor, exclusively. Sometimes they're transposed to D, but that is another band illusion. No, I'm not joking. Try it. Take a tuning fork, take your favorite cuts, your favorite records, the golden ones and the platinum ones, and check what is the fundamental. And you find out that they're all in minor, and most in A minor. I don't know why. It's totally unmusical, it's stupid, and it does also generate an undercurrent of boredom of which nobody's conscious. People don't know. They think the chair is too hard, or the trumpet wasn't really good, And all it is like this Bach, you know, remember Bach? A guy who also didn't know about that. If you look at his suites and Brandenburg concertos, all movements are in the same key. That's why they get so boring after a while. Vivaldi was the same fool. They just didn't pay attention to the requisite variety. There should be some change and then some return made. Again, so that the decision made make a significance. And Bach did not know that law. He never studied with me. And he had to suffer for that for centuries now. So take that with a little bit of grain of salt. But remember the structure of my text. The structure I take seriously. The examples can be played around with. You can find funnier results or more domestic ones. But it is true that Bach suffers with the audience because the audience does not know that's the same key. Bores it. So they do not know the difference between boredom and complacency. And I regret to say that's the most important musician's skillful work today, which is in the field of rock music and the commercial, unfortunately commercial music today, is jeopardized by them having no friends, but only fans. There's nobody there who dares tell them, change the key, or on your record, don't play the same. Look at the sequence, the programming. Give it some variety. Don't change the pieces. I'm not a music critic. I'm an audience critic. I don't want to be maltreated. I'm listening to your music. Give me this little bit of change of venue. Why did I say that? How did I get there? Do you remember?
Theater music.
Theater music. Thank you very much. That is where it started to become quite important. I had more choices. It was a fight to get the permission in a state-supported theater. Big, with a piece like that, and the director of
What theater did?
the Munich Residence Theater, which is really a very reputed theater, even today. And Kortner was the director, and so it was an awe-inspiring day when I went and said, I have been permitted to do something in Köln in the electronic studio. Would you mind if I do some electronic music? What that? So I had to get him some Stockhausen and some König and some Pousseur tapes and meet him in a place at the radio station, which was the only place with tape players at the time. And there he said, all right, Mr. Brün, go ahead. In German. Which I did. It was good. It was okay. The music critics were somewhat hard on it, but the actors were very nice, and the audience was very nice. So it had all its 100 performances, and I had the pleasure of not having pleased the music critics, which is a goal. There's nothing quite as insulting than having pleased the music critics. Quite an asshole. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? I'll be around. If there will be tomorrow afternoon, you said all that already.
Yes.
Then I don't have to.
At noon, outdoors,
Yes.
Performers Workshop Ensemble. Alex and I are members of it. There'll be 5 other people. We'll be doing some theater sketches, plus some new music, and piece by Brün for flute and tap dancer. So we'll be in it.
Yeah, then I play another horrible piece in my lecture. 3 pieces. One is very nice, the other is horrible, and the last one is again very nice.